Hey, we're back to talk more about some other concepts and ideas, time and space, and the relationship of that into the game. So, this is why it's a good idea for you to know the rules, because even the GM on the day, myself included, is going to freeze up when it's a game that he's not played before, even though it's similar to the games he's played before. He's trying to crunch all of that stuff, all of the old stuff that you'd try and remember anyway, alongside all of these new things, and trying to juggle all of the maps and everything else, and like what room you're in, and juggle that against all the possibilities of special events popping off, anything reactive to what you've just done, tracking where enemies are moving around in the facility while you're moving. They might be like, okay, they've gone from that room to that room, and then you'll see where they've gone, and it'd be great to play it on Roll20 in that sense. It's more complicated than Mutant to play, I think, in that sense. There's a lot more sort of like concrete elements that really have to be used, rather than like narrative concepts that you can kind of like fluff across. There's some very like definitive points you need down, and maps and zones is one element of, having control of the spatial idea of where you are. So the zone, as we mentioned before, is basically the room you're in, the corridor you're in, or like the section while outside. And you've got the range categories, and the range categories will also give you some sort of modifier to shooting, as well as things like sneaking and stuff. So the different ranges in this game are engaged, which is basically, other games used to call it arm's length, which will tell you, and that's your basic melee range to do melees with, except where exceptions apply. Right next to you, basically, you've got short range then. So in other words, if you manage to move back a bit, you are then in short range, which is a few meters away or in the same zone slash room slash corridor. You're having a firefight down the corridor from each other, you're in short range. Medium range, up to 25 meters away in an adjacent room. So they might be at the very, very end of the corridor, using the end of the corridor as cover and firing back. You could argue it would be the GM's call to say, oh, I'll say that's medium range. Or they might run down the corridor and then find an alcove in halfway down the corridor, and that's definitely short range. And you see where we're at there. Yeah, they might be at the door firing into the room. You might be at the other side of the room. We could maybe call that medium range. Then they enter the room, after the first guy in's been shot, because stormtroopers, even though they aren't, it's the rule of stormtroopers, first man in, right? Even though, yeah, I'd love to see stormtroopers versus aliens, wouldn't you? Now that would be a thing. Stormtroopers on an alien-infested planet, where they've been told not to miss, told to actually hit. In the other Star Wars, Vader ordered them not to shoot to kill. Anyway, I'm getting off that. Medium range. Long range, up to 100 meters away, i.e. 4 zones, 4 rooms away, or rooms, corridors combination, or whatever, or something outside 100 meters. Or extreme range, like about 1 kilometer. So it's quite a long way. Those are the range categories. And the movement, when you do like a move action, you can, like, depending on how far away it is, you might need to spend a couple of moves to get from like extreme to long. But up close, if you want to go for, say, from like short to engage, that's just the one move action, and plump, you're in. Of course, there's all these other elements that the Mutant games didn't have, things like shoving, where you can actually now attempt to, roll a thing to push someone back. And now you're not locked in combat anymore, and you can go woo and start like retreating away that way. Or you might want to shove someone tactically for some reason. So we measure time here, and we spoke about it a bit before, but we can really nail it here now. And we spoke about a round, a turn. There's also something called a shift, and the game will refer to shifts. So the sort of thing that, like a working day or a period of work before you like knock off. A round can be 5 to 10 seconds, so that would be primarily combat. A turn would be 5 to 10 minutes. That would be stealth or exploration. And a shift, and basically remember the supply rolls and how they link into measuring time. And a shift would be like 5 to 10 hours, and you could use that for recovery, but you could also use it for like doing repair work on something, building something. It's not just like the A-Team where, you know, when you want something to go really, really fast, and you know, you play the music and we're there within about a minute. Instead, you might have to take a shift, and the book might say, oh, repairing that given thing will take a shift of time. So, you know, you might need to put someone on that. And what's everyone else doing? Are they splitting the party? Are they carrying on exploring the facility? Are they waiting around and giving them cover? Are they really going to wait there for 5 to 10 hours with you? You know, and what's happening in that time? You know, you're burning time. What advantage is the enemy gaining? And let me just tell you that time is not an idle thing in this game. The GM may well be tracking things on a time shift basis. Something might be loose and roaming, and it may be gaining an advantage against you. It's pretty cool little ideas here, like zone features. So this could apply to a corridor or a room or whatever, or an area of land, and it can like change the way you'd interact, say with mobility or observation, or be very, very narrow and stuff like that. So some of the zone features might have changes on them. Enemy movement. Enemies can either be active or passive, i.e. they know you're there and they're actively trying to, you know, stalk you and kill you. They may just be stalking you. That's the other thing. They may just continue stalking you and not attack yet. But, you know, passive enemies, those are the kind of ones that you can take unawares, as long as they don't spot you, as long as you don't get detected. It would be a useful thing to just mention motion trackers, which is pretty darn cool, and you can use them once per turn, because the motion tracker is synonymous with Alien, isn't it? The M314 unit, for example, here. Each time you use it, and you can use it once per turn. Remember, a turn is like 5 to 10 minutes, couple of rooms or corridors, something like that. So you do a supply roll every time. So that motion tracker is going to run out of juice the more you use it. But it will, you know, give you pings on anything that moves up to 4 zones away. But if a thing is standing still, then it's not going to ping. Okay, so yeah, initiative is handled a bit differently than it was in the other games. You don't roll a die, and there's no chance of getting the same. Here, you're supposed to have like a shared deck of cards between 1 and 10. So you could just use a playing card pack or whatever, and you basically, each player just draws one. So you can't end up with the same score, and that's it. Where you are on the initiative is where it is. Lowest goes first, basically, in that order. Simple, really. Yeah, these free league games has never like made a big deal of the initiative in other senses, the way some other RPGs do. Even though it could be quite disastrous if something managed to get on you and really, you know, get a whole bunch of moves in. Of course, there may be some devastatingly fast enemies that may have more than one initiative turn. Watch out for that. And there are, of course, as I suggested, stunts and things that let you change where your initiative is. Of course, a big part of the game that you need to get your head around is the slow and fast actions. And in slow and fast actions, you can either do one fast and one slow action, or two fast actions. So that will be a familiar concept to a lot of you that have played roleplay games. Now the chart for that is on page 88, and I highly recommend that you whack a printout of it. It's not very printer friendly, is it? Probably find a chart of it somewhere, and have a general awareness of what your slow and fast actions are. But basically speaking, slow actions tend to be things like skills, and remember, shooting and hitting are skills. Any skill is always going to be a slow action. So even giving orders, which is command, which is a skill, slow action. Using your signature item, it could be like your little lucky charm that helps bring you to your senses or whatever. That's a slow. Climbing into a spacesuit, starting an engine, crawling while you're prone is a slow action, which makes sense, of course. Fast actions would be, run, move through a door, get up from prone, draw a weapon, all things that you'd be aware of as being fast or half actions, or wherever you've seen them. Blocking an attack, though, that's the thing. So the idea of being able to block, everyone can block, and you can block hand to hand against humans that are attacking you, but against xenomorph type aliens, if you're unlucky enough to be attacked by one of them and you've just got your hands, you can't block with just your hands. You would need like a weapon or something to attempt to block them. And the block, it's pretty cool. I feel like this is an integral point to make about blocking. They hit you, you then react by you giving up one of your fast actions to attempt to block. And you get to roll dice, and you get to try and negate their dice and maybe stunt, but it's not counterattack. You just get to try and negate their dice and maybe have some sort of tactical knickknacks going on there with the stunting, maybe. Who knows? But the blocking very specifically lets you do those certain sorts of things, which we'd get into, if you wanted to try and actually block. And the types of... Well, actually, you can counterattack with blocking. You can deal damage equal to the damage rating of the weapon, but only that much. You can't then spend additional. So in actual fact, you could do your weapon's damage and no more back. And if you had even more successes from your block, you could try and negate some of their successes using your successes, or you could attempt to disarm. That's the things you can do with blocking. So if you haven't had a turn yet, that uses one of your fast actions up. So you need to track that yourself, you the player, that you've used one of your fast actions and it's not even your turn yet. So unlike, say, D&D where you get a free reaction, it's not like that. This uses one of your fast actions. And if you've already had a turn and you've spent your two fast actions, or one fast, one slow, guess what? You don't get to block. It doesn't take it from next turn. Your next turn will be a different round. This is a per round situation. So if you think you're going to get attacked and you want to save a block, that's tactically your decision to make. Well, isn't that thrilling? Yeah, if you're grappled, you can do a grapple attack. If you've grappled someone with a fast action, you can attempt to retreat from an enemy at engaged range as a fast action. You can aim with a +2 to hit as a fast action. Seek cover. Get behind some cover that's in the same zone as you. Go into an Overwatch position, which basically just means you pop your fast action to enter Overwatch. You select a direction and Before it's your next turn again, you then get to use your slow action. If you've already used your slow action, obviously it's not going to swing, is it? You get to use your slow action to take a shot at someone, and you get to do it before they get to do whatever they were going to do. But they still have to carry on and do what they were going to do. So they might run out of cover and then you get to show. And that's the point you declare it. And your one would go first, because Overwatch always goes first. Yeah, so Overwatch, that's a thing. You can lose Overwatch obviously by getting attacked in close combat and stuff like that, you know, that whole, or you do any other action other than to have to do that shoot. Or, you know, grab the wheel, drive, enter, exit a vehicle, use an item. Those are fast actions. So technically, if you were tanking, I suppose, you knew you were a really good tank spec and you weren't actually going to fight, you could just save both your fast actions for 2 lots of blocks. I don't see any reason why you couldn't, and just try to block. You know, block one person, and then if you're surrounded, you know, try and block the next one as well. And you might get a bit of weapon damage on them at least from the counter-attack stuff. It's all made a lot more clearer than it was in Mutant, at least. So there's that. The book here then covers sneak attacks and ambushes, but it just gives you a free go. There is a bit of a modification depending on the range of you trying to sneak attack. Closer you get, the harder it is to actually get in and sneak attack. You can grapple someone as a stunt, so in your close combat for extra successes you could apply one of them to actually grapple. So you grab them, grab them to the ground, they drop the weapon they were holding, they can't move, they can only perform an action to try and break free, but which is a slow action if they win an opposed close combat against you in their turn, but you get to do fast action, the grapple attacks. So it's fast action and it cannot be blocked, of course, because they're grappled. Of course, aliens can attach themselves to you in a grapple in a very, very terrible, hideous way. And yeah, if you've got a retreating, it mentions here, if you have an active enemy at engaged range, you must make a mobility roll to move away to short range from them. If you fail, you still move, but your enemy gets a free close combat attack against you that doesn't count towards their actions in the round, and you can't block it. So yeah, there's that. And the shoving, as I mentioned there, you do it with a close combat roll. It might require a modifier, and they get shoved to short range. So yeah, you could shove someone and then take a shot at them, for instance, I suppose. But shoves can be blocked, so hey. Firing ranged weapons, they have a modifier depending on the range. So it depends, like normal engaged, so in melee, if you try to shoot a ranged weapon in normal circumstances in melee, you'll be -3 to your base dice to fire, which it's harder to draw bead when they're breathing right down on top of you. As an example, short range, no modifier. Medium range, you're at -1 to hit with range. Long range, -2. Extreme range, -3. So you've got that. But you've got other things: large target, small target, dim light, darkness, aimed shots. Full auto fire I won't cover here, but basically lets you distribute extra shots using successes to other people and spreading it out a bit, Ammo we've already covered. There's different types of cover. If you manage to get into a piece of cover, it will have a cover rating, depending on how good it is. If it is a shrubbery, if you demand a shrubbery, then you'll have 2 armor. Bit of furniture would be 3, for example. Door would be 4. Inner bulkhead 5. Outer bulkhead 6. Armoured bulkhead 7+, and so on and so on. And you can just, like, when you do your armour save, you could just add your cover and armour up and blah 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 blah. Do something like that. Unless armour and cover can take damage, and to be honest, I haven't actually been that far enough into the book to see if armour in this game can take damage. I'd like to think it would. Yeah, I suppose it may not. I don't know, because before it was rolling ones, armour takes damage, so who knows what's going to happen here. Who knows? When you have your health drop to 0, you're broken and you go down and you roll immediately for a critical injury. You can't go lower than 0, you can't perform any actions, you can crawl and mumble, basically. You can, if you're not broken anymore, like someone's just like saved you, you can recover a lot 1 point of lost health per turn, which is every 5 to 10 minutes of rest. Not wandering around, not getting back to what you were doing, of rest. But critical injuries still stay in effect, of course. Getting back up, you can either have someone do first aid on you, which is a medical aid skill, as a slow action. Certain medical equipment can give you a bonus in that. And they can give you a number of their successes back as health. Or you can get back eventually on your own. If there's no one around to help you, you automatically recover 1 point of health after 1 turn. Again, a turn, 5 to 10 minutes, or whatever. Then you can get back up on your own. If you want to try and finish someone off, a coup de grace, a defenseless person, then the way these free league games work across the board is you have to do an empathy roll if you want to kill a human. This only applies for humans, really. If you want to kill them, you need to fail an empathy roll to kill them. Make sense? So yeah, that you'd have to get past that first, and you increase your stress level by 1, because killing in cold blood. It's this isn't a cartoon. This is like a psychological sci-fi horror. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. We've got the critical injuries chart here in front of me, which is a D66 roll, and it basically starts from a result of 11 being just basically winded, no effects, all the way up to a 66, which will kill you. And there are a number of other injuries, and it will say the healing time on it. It will have an effect sometimes of the injury, so how long you're going to suffer the niggling effects of that thing from, which is nasty. And it's also going to say whether it's fatal or not. So if it's fatal, it will have a time limit on it, and the time limit is how long you've got until you die, unless someone saves you with a medical aid thing. And then of course you've got a permanent mental trauma chart as well, because why not, right? This is where things get really Cthulhu, isn't it? And I think I'll leave it there. I'll see you at the next one.